So my name is Ethan Bowers. I'm a junior at Gettysburg College, and I am currently in anthropology with an archaeology-focused major and a minor in public history. So my artifact it has a very fancy name. It is a blue linen map depicting the town of Gettysburg. That is the name of the artifact, very fancy. But it is part of the Blair Conan collection, and as I was just mentioning, it doesn't have a ton of provenance on it. There's even like a big what if around like exactly what date it was created. There's no map maker mark on it or anything like that, but we do know that it was a couple years after the battle, somewhere between 1884 to 1887. So that's about the extent of like what I know about the like exact details of the map. It currently is depicting, specifically when it's depicting the town of Gettysburg, it depicts the town of Gettysburg, and predominantly though the focus of it is on the different farm plots of the different farmers and farmlands that were in the surrounding area around Gettysburg, and in particular around the battlefield. And what really stood out is the fact that at this point, it's obvious that the town had already started purchasing farmland, because you have areas specifically around Little Round Top, Culp's Hill, Pickett's Charge, a small portion up where like the Peace Light is located, and small properties in those general areas, Cemetery Ridge, and around the seminary and stuff like that, that are purchased and listed under the name of GBMA, Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association, which was the first organization to start working on preserving the battlefield into what it is today. So that's really what kind of stuck out to me, and that's what the map is really depicting. It's the mixture of early forms of the battlefield as we know it today, as well as the just town of Gettysburg in general. First thing that comes to mind is memories, but that doesn't feel right. So I think the best way to describe it is insightful, because as I just said, this is depicting the battlefield in one of its earliest stages. This is before we have it as we have it today with the Park Service. This is when the battlefield is still relatively farm fields and people are just starting to put infrastructure. And even what I was looking when I was observing this for this interview, there's a rail line that I didn't recognize called the Round Top Rail Line that goes through town but goes straight out to the Round Tops. And ironically, we were in class talking about this, and that one of the people who was working with the Battlefield Memorial Association had purchased the Round Tops essentially with the concept of using them as viewing points, vistas. And so presumably that rail line was put in an effort to make it convenient for travelers to go out to the highlight points of the battle. So it's insightful because it shows you what people post-Civil War felt were the important parts of Gettysburg specifically to preserve. Because one of the unique things about Gettysburg in general is the fact that the townspeople recognized the importance of the battle fairly quickly after the battle and took steps to protect the battlefield as it was, to preserve it in the national memory. And their efforts kind of, from what I understand, became a standard that other people copied for battlefields like Antietam, Monocacy. Those are two that first come to mind. So to kind of see what areas of the battlefield they felt were significant enough to purchase first, to put down on a map, and then to know what the battlefield is today, it's insightful, because it kind of gets into the mindset of people back then post Civil War. It doesn't necessarily change anything with my perspective on myself. Like as I said, it's very interesting to kind of get into the mindset of what people were thinking were the important parts of the battle. Particularly, I mean, there's the old saying of, the victors write history, write the perspective of history and stuff like that. I did not say that quote correctly, but the general gist is understood. And that's kind of what you see here with all the areas that are initially purchased are Union positions. They're Culp's Hill, they're the little round tops, Seminary Ridge, the area around the Peace Light and stuff like that, with the exception of several of the key Confederate movements like Pickett's Charge, which ultimately ended in a Union victory. So they're definitely pushing the Union victory narrative first and then preserving the battlefield in its entirety later. Unfortunately, there is not a ton of provenance on this, and I did do an attempt to research provenance on it. As I had mentioned at the beginning, it's part of the Blair Conan collection, which, thanks to the lovely archivist that told me this, apparently was a kind of 4 generations of families that lived in a house that is now part of the college campus. Unfortunately, beyond the fact that this map was found in the house, there's not many details about where it came prior to that. Like I said, and I've checked the front and back, there's no map maker's mark, there's no identifier to be whether this is specifically used by like a private company, by the town of Gettysburg, by the Battlefield Memorial Association, and what party specifically owned this map and why it came into the hands of the family. So beyond the fact that it was ultimately in the hands of the family and now is ultimately in special collections once the house came into possession of the college, there's not much I can say on the provenance of the artifact. Well, and I mean, it's kind of fitting that Remembrance Day is only a couple days away. I mean, it's kind of just that idea of, again, insightfulness, remembrance, the biggest and most significant artifact of the, Gettysburg National Battlefield is the battlefield itself. That is an artifact. It might not always be considered an artifact because it's environmental, but that is by principle an artifact, and it is the best one that the Park Service has. So to be able to look at this map and to see the difference both in infrastructure and, just environment in general, what property they focused on first compared to what property they now possess, what was important to list on here, because on top of that, you do have major buildings listed on here like the seminary and stuff like that, but the copse of trees, but you don't have some of the smaller farms, locations of the different headquarters and stuff like that. Those aren't listed on here. So to be able to kind of get into that mindset and see what they thought were important to record first, to purchase and preserve first, compared to how the narrative and preservation effort has changed now with the battlefield as it is, I think is the most significant thing about this map, and the most important thing to remember when thinking about the battlefield today is that this is unlike other artifacts where you can stick it in a climate-controlled case, protect it, preserve it, and kind of freeze it in time. You can't do that with an environmental artifact. It's stuck out in the elements. It's going to be ever-changing. So what you see today won't necessarily be what you see in 20 years, nor would it have been what you would have saw 20 years prior. So to be able to kind of get an idea, very relative, but get an idea of what people would have saw and how they would have perceived the battle immediately following the Civil War is very interesting.